A city can look alive long after its soul has left the room. The buses still groan at the curb, coffee still steams in paper cups, glass towers still catch the morning light and fling it back down into the street with the cold pride of polished machinery. Somewhere a dog noses through a planter. Somewhere, a man in a gray quarter zip hurries past a woman he has seen every Tuesday for 6 years and does not know her name. The crosswalk clicks. The crowd moves. And yet something essential is missing. A people used to be more than a census category with better shoes. A people had a shape. It had ancestors behind it, children ahead of it, graves beneath it, feasts inside its calendar, songs inside its throat, and a law that reached higher than appetite. It knew who belonged. It knew why belonging mattered. It could be cruel, foolish, vain, provincial, and absurd in the ordinary human way, but it possessed a center. A village bell does not solve every problem. It does remind everyone there is a village. Now there are merely people. People with usernames, people with preferences, people with streaming accounts, gym memberships, work logins, and anxious little biographies arranged for strangers on platforms owned by men who dress like substitute geometry teachers. People still hunger for belonging, yet the old bonds that once bore the weight of civilization have weakened, snapped, or been repackaged as lifestyle accessories. Religion no longer orders public time. Blood no longer binds families into durable chains. Place no longer commands loyalty. The clan, the parish, the neighborhood, the nation, all have been thinned by the acid rain of modern life until much of what remains is signage. This did not happen because everyone suddenly became stupid, though the phones have made a sincere attempt. It happened because the structures that once formed persons were broken by forces larger than personality. Secularization stripped the church of public authority and made sacred time look like a private hobby. Industrial life moved sons and daughters away from their families, then praised them for becoming economically mobile, which is a polite phrase for easy to uproot. Global markets dissolved the loyalties of soil and kin, replacing old duties with contracts, consumer habits, and the faint consolation of free shipping. The family shrank, the neighborhood blurred. The holy day became a shopping day. The nation became a debate topic. The person became a small, sovereign consumer floating through a warehouse of choices, rich in options, poor in reasons. That is the modern condition in one sense: more doors, fewer homes. We can see the damage everywhere, though we have trained ourselves to explain it away with statistics, therapy language, and little charts that look authoritative because someone used blue. Birth rates fall because family no longer feels like destiny. Neighborhoods lose coherence because the residents share walls without sharing a world. Rituals decay because the sacred has been replaced by entertainment, and entertainment is a thin soup. It can distract hunger, it cannot feed the body. A society may run for a long time on residual capital. It may coast on inherited trust, inherited manners, inherited architecture, inherited law, inherited self-restraint. It may continue to walk, speak, pay taxes, and hold conferences with tasteful name badges. But once the bones have been removed, the gait changes. The body still moves. It no longer strides. We are living in a civilization with its bones removed. This is why so many people feel an ache they cannot name. They mistake it for politics, loneliness, burnout, nostalgia, or bad sleep. Those are symptoms. The deeper wound is severance. Modern man was told that freedom meant release from old bonds. He believed it, perhaps because release is easier to market than duty. Then he discovered that a man cut free from every inherited attachment is not majestic. He is available, mostly to advertisers. There is a reason every app wants community now. The machine that helped dissolve community has begun selling it back in monthly installments. When old bonds fail, new organizing principles arise. History is not gentle about this. It does not leave empty altars empty for long. When tribal Europe fractured, the medieval church gathered peoples under a sacred canopy. When feudal bonds weakened, the nation-state gave loyalty a new grammar. In each case, a new form appeared to carry belonging after the old form could no longer bear the load. Our time has no clear successor. That is the tension. The old bonds no longer command. The new ones have not yet matured. Between them stands the modern person, arms full of devices, heart full of static, trying to assemble a self out of playlists, purchases, political opinions, and screenshots of rooms he cannot afford. It would be comic if it were smaller. It would be less tragic if it were less boring. In the absence of shared faith, blood, and place, modern people turned to politics. They did this because politics at least seemed serious. It had flags, crowds, enemies, slogans, saints, martyrs, heretics, and ritual denunciations. A little thin gruel, perhaps, but warm enough if one had been starving. The state became the surrogate tribe. Ideology took the place of doctrine. Party affiliation stood in for kinship. Policy debate became a strange substitute for sacred ritual, complete with incense, if one counts the moral fumes rising from televised panels. But politics cannot bear the weight now placed upon it. Politics can administer, it can command, it can punish, it can distribute favors, it can draw boundaries and write laws. It cannot replace a grandmother's table. It cannot make a song sacred. It cannot give a child the sense that his life is part of an ancient procession. It cannot teach men to love their dead. It cannot sanctify a marriage. It cannot make ugliness bearable by calling it access. Political identities are brittle because they rest on abstractions. They are made of propositions, resentments, promises, and alarms. They can generate heat. They rarely generate warmth. They offer anger without intimacy and purpose without permanence. The moment power shifts, the meaning shifts with it, and the tribe must scramble to explain why yesterday's sacred cause has been quietly replaced by today's approved emergency. The modern partisan is always being summoned, always being informed, always being asked to care about something that will vanish into the feed by Thursday. He is invited to join a crusade with no cathedral, no pilgrimage, no relic, no feast, and no grandchildren. He receives in compensation a yard sign. Freedom for over freedom from. That is the distinction our politics cannot sustain. Liberalism promises liberation, yet it struggles to say what one should be liberated into. Freedom from authority, freedom from tradition, freedom from constraint, freedom from limits. The whole program moves like a man demolishing walls because he enjoys the sound of falling brick, then finding himself in a windy field wondering where the house went. Conservatism sees the ruin and mourns. It remembers the house. It quotes the builder. It sometimes sells commemorative mugs featuring the old house, but it lacks the power, courage, or craft to rebuild it. Much of it has become a museum guide standing in the rubble, calmly explaining the importance of load-bearing walls to people carrying sledgehammers. Both sides churn out slogans while the social order disintegrates behind them. And the public square, once a place where citizens appeared before one another as embodied persons, has become a digital amphitheater. Nothing is remembered. Everything is monetized. A man may spend 6 hours shouting about civilization on a platform designed to destroy his attention. This is the sort of contradiction modern life produces so casually it no longer blushes. People who once built churches now build mobs. Spectacle has replaced community. Spectacle gives the feeling of participation without the burden of presence. It lets one join a crowd without being known. It offers the thrill of belonging without duty. And because there is no duty, there is no depth. The feed has no memory, it has appetite. It eats outrage, beauty, grief, and confession with the same mouth. Politics, untethered from culture, becomes a theater of resentment. It cannot replace religion because it cannot bless. It cannot replace family because it cannot love. It cannot replace place because it cannot endure. It can win elections, perhaps. It can lose them, too. Either way, the person returns to the same apartment, the same screen, the same hunger. Beneath the ruins, though, one instinct remains alive. The attraction to beauty. This is older than ideology, older than party, older than theory. People gather around what they find beautiful before they can explain why. A child reaches toward a color before he knows the word for it. A crowd quiets under a vaulted ceiling before anyone gives a lecture on sacred architecture. A man hears a song from another room and feels, without permission, that something in him has been addressed. Beauty speaks first. Argument arrives later, wearing spectacles and asking for definitions. Aesthetic preference has power because it works by resonance. It does not begin by demanding agreement. It begins by arranging the senses. A shared taste in music, clothing, architecture, ritual, or gesture says wordlessly, "You are near my world." That is no small thing. In an age of rootless persons, shared beauty can create an immediate bond. Where beliefs often divide before they are understood, Beauty gathers before it explains. This is why aesthetic tribes have appeared across modern life with such strange force. They rise because people need coherence, and beauty can supply it faster than doctrine. The punk does not need a treatise to know the uniform. The goth does not require a committee to understand the room. The skateboarder recognizes the posture, the shoes, the pavement, the little ceremony of risk and balance. Sneaker collectors to outsiders may look like men paying astonishing sums for rubber theology. Inside their world, there are codes, ranks, stories, loyalties, and memory. A colorway can become a genealogy. Civilization has been built on stranger things, though fewer of them came in limited release. Online, aesthetic tribes multiply because the digital void is hungry for form. Vaporwave, dark academia, cottagecore, architectural purism, anime fandoms, trad menswear, old money style, goblin core, fairy tale maximalism, clean brutalism, forest monasticism in linen pants, and every other strange little banner of the image age. Some are shallow, some are half joking, some are commerce wearing a velvet cloak. Yet even the ridiculous ones reveal a serious fact. People are trying to make worlds. They take images, music, rooms, clothes, colors, books, weather, and mood, then gather them into a whole. They are attempting coherence inside chaos. They are saying, with imperfect materials, this belongs with this. A rainy window, a wool coat, a brass lamp, a shelf of old books, a certain song, a certain silence. The collection becomes a climate. The climate becomes an identity. The identity becomes a call. That matters. In the digital age, images arrive as fragments. 1 second, a war. Next, a cake. Next, a political scandal. Next, a dead celebrity. Next, a chair. Next, an advertisement for a product that looks as though it was designed by a committee of raccoons under fluorescent light. The feed shreds context. Aesthetic formation answers by reassembling fragments into worlds. It takes the broken glass of cyberspace and tries to make a window. This is a profound development. It shows that art remains the counterforce to digital chaos. Not art as decoration, art as ordering power. Art as the discipline by which scattered impressions become a form one can inhabit. Gall's law says complex systems that work evolve from simple systems that worked. That sentence should be carved above the door of every social theorist before he is permitted near a microphone. If one wants to build a new civilization, one should not begin with a 500-page constitution drafted by men who have never hosted a dinner. One begins with a room people want to enter, a table people want to return to, a song people remember, a style people can recognize from across the street. Simple forms, living forms. From those, larger orders may grow. Beauty shapes behavior without coercion. That is its secret. People willingly sacrifice for what they find beautiful. They will save money, practice skills, travel distances, endure discomfort, learn codes, submit to standards, and accept discipline because the object of devotion attracts them. A man who would rebel against an abstract rule will happily polish his shoes for the sake of elegance. The state may demand neatness. A gentleman desires it. The difference is civilization. Aesthetics can order life because beauty is order made visible to the senses. It shows the body what the mind might later understand. A cathedral commands reverence before the sermon begins. A uniform signals authority before the officer speaks. A well-set table disciplines conversation before the first toast. A garden teaches patience because no one can bully a rose into blooming on schedule, though modern management would probably try and then issue a quarterly report. When an aesthetic tribe develops coherence, rules emerge. No one has to begin with legislation. Certain clothes become fitting. Certain spaces become preferred. Certain gestures become expected. Certain forms of speech become vulgar. The aesthetic becomes a quiet law. Members internalize it. They begin to move differently, speak differently, desire differently. That is how culture works when it is alive. A culture is not a set of opinions. It is a pattern of loves. It trains the senses until conduct becomes natural. This is why ugliness is never neutral. Ugliness forms people too. A brutal room produces brutal habits. A cheap screen produces cheap attention. A neighborhood with no beauty teaches residents that no one expected greatness from them. They learn the lesson. Then, everyone expresses surprise at the results, because modern society specializes in planting nettles and filing lawsuits against the sting. History understood the power of aesthetic order. Gothic architecture shaped medieval towns around ascent. The cathedral did not sit in the town like one building among others. It gathered the town into relation. Its spire pulled the eye upward. Its bells ordered time. Its carvings told stories to the literate and illiterate alike. Stone became memory. Light became doctrine. Space became hierarchy. One did not need a pamphlet to know the center. The samurai aesthetic of restraint shaped conduct through form, dress, blade, posture, garden, and ceremony. The warrior was not merely trained to fight. He was trained to inhabit a severe beauty. The form disciplined the man. Even monastic life carried its order through habit, chant, architecture, silence, meals, corridors, and hours. The sacred entered the day through repeated form, and repeated form became a school of the soul. The world inside can become the world outside if a people has the courage to build it. That is the next step. Aesthetic tribes already exist as scattered impulses. They have images, music, clothes, language, and taste. Some have gatherings, some have markets, some have archives, some have patrons in embryo, though the patrons may currently be trapped in group chats discussing chair upholstery. What they lack is rooted form. They live too much in mood, too little in matter. Online forums cannot anchor a people. Temporary gatherings cannot sustain a civilization. Aesthetic communities must enter space. They need houses, halls, studios, gardens, workshops, schools, shops, chapels where appropriate, libraries where possible, and streets that do not look like the afterlife of a spreadsheet. A Gothic tribe must build pointed rooms and shadowed places where reverence feels plausible. A pastoral tribe must cultivate fields, kitchens, porches, and barns that make domestic order visible. A maritime tribe needs docks, rope, salt air, tools, and the discipline of weather. A classical tribe must recover proportion in stone, clothing, speech, and manners. If the aesthetic never leaves the screen, it remains a perfume sprayed over exile. Space shapes conduct. A beautiful room makes certain behavior feel natural, and other behavior feel obscene. This is one reason modern ugliness is so destructive. When everything is designed to be temporary, washable, replaceable, and cheap, people begin to treat one another the same way. Beauty asks more of us. It can be inconvenient in the way a good ancestor is inconvenient. It expects us to stand up straight. Ritual comes next. A shared aesthetic must be repeated in time. It needs feasts, meals, initiations, workdays, rites of passage, commemorations, forms of dress, forms of greeting, and moments where the group sees itself made visible. The aesthetic cannot remain a costume worn on weekends. It must become a rhythm. People need to know when to gather, how to speak, what to bring, what to prepare, what to honor, what to refuse. Ritual turns admiration into belonging. A person may like a style alone. He belongs to a people when that style claims his calendar, his house, his friendships, his duties, and his memory. Then comes patronage. Permanence costs money, which is unfortunate, but has been the case since the first man tried to build anything grand and discovered that stone does not arrive because one feels strongly about it. Communities that aspire to endure must attract benefactors. Wealth seeks grandeur when grandeur is available. If a tribe builds something majestic, patrons will appear because money itself longs for absolution through form. It wants to become a hall, a school, a garden, a statue, a library, a place where the donor's name is spoken with something warmer than resentment. Monasteries understood this. Guilds understood this. Cities understood this. Beauty attracts resources because it offers wealth a path into memory. Boundary follows. Aesthetic communities must guard their standards. This is delicate work. Boundaries can become cruelty when administered by petty souls. Yet without boundaries, form dissolves. Diluted aesthetics collapse because the center cannot hold if everything is permitted to call itself belonging. A community built around beauty must be hospitable, but hospitality is not surrender. A house with no door is not generous, it is drafty. Standards preserve integrity. That word may sound severe to modern ears, which have been trained to hear every boundary as a personal insult. Yet all beauty depends on exclusion. A melody excludes random noise. A garden excludes weeds. A suit excludes sloppiness. A rite excludes improvisation at the wrong moment. Form exists because some things belong and others do not. The great modern fear of exclusion has produced a culture where nothing fits, and then we wonder why everyone feels misshapen. The return of social capital through beauty begins with a simple recognition. Trust grows where people want to remain together. Where does trust come from? It comes from this: I want to be here with you. Not in an abstract sense, not as a slogan. Here, in this room, at this table, under this roof, inside this order of things. I recognize the care you have given to the place. You recognize the care I have given to the ritual. We have both sacrificed for the same beauty. Now I know something about you no credential could tell me. Modern society suffers from a deficit of trust because it suffers from a deficit of shared symbols. People have no reason to sacrifice for one another when they do not inhabit a common world. The state can regulate this problem. It can subsidize it. It can study it with a grant large enough to make a medieval prince blush. It cannot manufacture the lived trust that grows from shared labor and shared love. Beauty can. A well-kept hall inspires care. A beautiful church inspires volunteer labor because people feel the dignity of the place. A neighborhood with coherent architecture invites residents to maintain it because neglect becomes visible. A shared festival creates memory. A workshop teaches skill. A communal meal makes hierarchy, gratitude, and hospitality tangible in the body. These things may sound small. Small things accumulate into a people. The state can redistribute money. It cannot redistribute reverence. Aesthetic communities would create obligations that strengthen bonds. Members would teach one another crafts because the craft serves the form. They would maintain spaces because the space embodies the group. They would pass down customs because the customs protect memory. They would defend standards because the standards protect belonging. Over time, these repeated actions form resilience. When trouble comes, networks built from shared admiration hold more firmly than networks built from convenience. Convenience flees at the first storm. Admiration stays to repair the roof, though it may complain about the workmanship with aristocratic bitterness. Even outsiders respond to beauty. Tourists travel to towns with strong aesthetic identities because they sense coherence. Investors prefer places where order and pride are visible. Families seek neighborhoods that feel formed rather than dumped from a municipal printer. Young people are drawn to groups that offer a recognizable world. Beauty attracts loyalty and resources because it announces that someone cared before you arrived and expects you to care after you enter. This is why the next age may be shaped less by argument than by construction. People are exhausted by debate. Debate in our time has become a ritual of permanent paralysis. Men gather to explain why nothing can be done, then congratulate themselves for the sophistication of the explanation. There is a place for argument, but a civilization is never restored by argument alone. Eventually, someone must build the door, cook the meal, sew the garment, compose the song, raise the hall, plant the tree, and teach the child how to enter quietly. Aesthetic tribes can sidestep the sterility of politics by competing through form. Let one community build the better school. Let another build the finer street. Let another cultivate the more graceful domestic life. Let another recover music worth hearing without anesthetic. Let another make clothing that restores dignity to the ordinary body. Let another build gardens where old men want to sit and children want to run. Let them compete by making life more beautiful, more ordered, more humane. The stronger culture will be the one others imitate. That is how influence grows when it is healthy, not by coercion, not by scolding, not by winning a panel. Influence grows when people see a form of life and feel wonder. They see the houses, the meals, the manners, the confidence, the children, the craft, the laughter, the graves tended with care, and they say, perhaps with embarrassment, I want that. Beauty has entered them before argument could raise its finger. This is the civilizational meaning of aesthetic tribes. They are not trivial escape pods from modernity, though many begin that way. They are the first rough signs of a search for order after the collapse of inherited bonds. A people without shared faith, blood, and place will seek new forms of belonging. Politics has failed to replace the old bonds because politics is too thin. Consumption has failed because buying things together is not a covenant, even when the packaging is tasteful. Digital identity has failed because the screen cannot incarnate loyalty. It can display signs. It cannot make a home. Beauty remains. Beauty can gather persons into form. It can shape conduct without constant argument. It can create hierarchy without bureaucracy. It can attract patrons without begging for pity. It can make duty feel desirable. It can call people out of abstraction and back into rooms, streets, tools, garments, gardens, tables, and songs. Beauty can make a people visible to itself. Of course, there are dangers. Aesthetic tribes can become narcissistic. They can mistake style for virtue. They can become little courts of taste where insecure people police each other's sleeves with the moral gravity of imperial judges. They can become consumer niches, mood boards, or cults of surface. They can worship beauty as an idol rather than serve beauty as a sign. These dangers are real. Every powerful thing casts a shadow, and modern life is already crowded with people eager to turn any sacred impulse into merchandise by Tuesday afternoon. But the danger of abuse does not cancel the need for form. The deeper danger is a civilization without beauty, without shared ritual, without a sense of sacred order, without the ability to love anything enough to preserve it. That civilization becomes manageable, yes, predictable, marketable, compliant. It becomes a place where persons are treated as units, communities as markets, children as lifestyle choices, elders as expenses, and art as content. It becomes safe in the way a padded room is safe. That is not human greatness. Human beings are made to inhabit worlds of meaning. We need order that can be touched. We need beauty that trains desire. We need rituals that carry memory through time. We need spaces that teach us how to stand. We need forms of life that make loyalty plausible. We need to belong to something more solid than an opinion and more luminous than a brand. The death of God and the decline of the West do not have to end in gray rubble and nervous entertainment. They may become the clearing where new orders are planted. This does not mean resurrecting failed ideologies with better typography. It means recovering the older truth that every civilization begins as an act of formation. Someone decides what is beautiful. Someone builds accordingly. Someone gathers others around the form. Someone protects it. Someone teaches children to love it. The next civilization may begin as a dinner in a room where the lamps are warm, the table is set with care, and the guests feel, perhaps for the first time in years, that they have entered a place with a soul. It may begin with a workshop where young men learn to make something that lasts longer than their mood. It may begin with a small school whose walls and songs teach children that learning is an ascent, not a data transfer. It may begin with a neighborhood that refuses ugly construction because the residents understand that ugliness is a public injury. It may begin with a guild, a hall, a garden, a choir, a clothing rule, a feast day, a library, a burial society, a patron, a builder, a mother who will not let plastic junk conquer the living room, a father who teaches his son that beauty is a discipline before it is a pleasure. It will begin somewhere concrete. It always does. The abstract age is dying of its own weight. It promised liberation from all inherited forms and delivered loneliness with excellent branding. It dissolved the old bonds and offered politics, spectacle, and consumption in their place. Those substitutes have failed. The person still longs for a world. The household still longs for order. The street still longs for beauty. The soul still longs for a banner worthy of loyalty. When beauty becomes that banner, the tribes that carry it will shape the next age. Some will fail. Many will become silly. A few will become magnificent. That is enough. Civilization does not require everyone to become grand at once. It requires a living form strong enough to attract imitation. One real hall can shame 1,000 comment threads. One graceful street can rebuke a century of planning jargon. One family ordered around beauty can become a seed. One seed, given time, can split stone. Return now to the city street. The buses still groan, the glass still shines. The crowd still moves beneath towers that could belong anywhere and nowhere. But in one window above the street, a lamp has been lit with care. A table is being set. Someone has chosen music fit for the hour. Someone has placed flowers where no algorithm required them. Someone is teaching a child to lower his voice when entering a beautiful room. The bones are being remembered. A grand world awaits.